not gonna cry. I'm 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 gonna cry. Insects of YouTube, and welcome to the next episode of Congratulations in Neon Genesis Evangelion Retrospective. And today we're going to talk about my personal favorite episode, episode 24, which is known as Knockin' on Heaven's Door. This episode is powerful. There is a reason why this is my favorite one now, and that is because, of course, the relationship between Shinji and Kaoru. I will always say this, but this episode manages to do what a lot of love stories, or a lot of kind of these romance kind of stories, movies, feature-length movies, don't do. And it manages, this succeeds at forming a more powerful, a more emotional relationship between both Shinji and Kaoru within 24 minutes than most films do within an hour and a half, and someone messaged me on Facebook. So let's just dive right on into this. And I have a feeling that this is going to just fall, this video is going to fall right apart, and I'm just going to go into a bunch of tangents about this and that and a whole shit caboodle. So I apologize right from the get-go if that happens. I do admit that I am biased towards this episode. So let's dive right on into this motherfucker. Okay, so the opening of this video, of this episode, is Asuka basically going through another one of her dream fucking shit, and she's losing her fucking mind. We already know this because of episode 22 and episode 23, and it only gets worse here because she actually becomes comatose in this episode. And you know, she's freaking out. She's like, "Mom, I've been chosen to be an Evangelion pilot. Isn't this exciting? We won't be lonely anymore. We don't need to worry about Dad never seeing us again," and so on and so forth. She opens the door and sees her mom hanging there, which still disturbs me. And she starts freaking out, and she's like, "I don't want to hear more about any of that stupid garbage from me." She's pissed off at everybody. She's pissed off at the entire world. She runs away, she becomes comatose, and that's basically all we get from Asuka from this entire episode. Thank God, because I'm done with her in this show. Well, actually, kind of ironic, because this technically is the last episode of the show. And now, I need to bring this up because we see her, like, sitting in this, after the destruction of Tokyo 3, because of, in the previous episode when Reg blew herself up, we see Asuka laying down in this destroyed building, and she's laying in a tub. And of course we learned that Hikari, Toji, Kensuke, they've all left because of this. They have literally had no choice but to leave. So Asuka's in, we see Asuka in this tub full of red water, which, I'll be honest, I don't think it's blood. I hope it's not blood, but it's definitely contaminated water, and she's just sitting there, which is really kind of disturbing considering the fact that in the last, or in episode 22, she says she doesn't even want to breathe the same air as Shinji and Masato, or that she doesn't want to breathe, she doesn't even want to bathe in the same water that they do. But yet she's doing this, so that's just disturbing. And she's completely fallen apart. Like, all she does is just, like, look over at the guards that find her. She's just, her mouth's agape. She's literally just fallen apart, and all the footage that we see from her from this point on is she's in this, she's in the hospital bed, right? She's just sitting there in this hospital bed, motionless, hooked up to all these machines because she stopped eating. She stopped, basically, she as she said in episode 23, she has no purpose anymore, or she feels like she has no purpose anymore, which is bullshit. But thank God they kind of redeemed that in EOE. However, here, we see her hook up to all these machines, and she's basically no longer human, in all essence, because she's relying on these machines to keep her alive. In essence, she's become an Evangelion. She's very parallel to what an Evangelion is now. And of course, that makes her transformation in EOE all the more powerful, but we'll get into that when we dive into that movie. And what makes it really sad here, too, is this episode shows, at the beginning anyways, just how lonely and desperate Shinji is. Now, of course, Shinji's been reborn into this guy. He knows that his purpose is to pilot the Evangelion, to save people. And you know, the first few times that I've seen the show, I realized that I never thought Shinji grew until this viewing. Shinji, this is the most grown-up Shinji will ever be, it was in episode 22, 23, and believe it or not, 24. Because and here, Misato has left. Misato is basically so driven to both avenge Kaji and fill her own needs of figuring out what the fuck Nerve is, which also makes her decision to save Shinji and end of Evangelion all the more powerful, but I digress, that she's out of the house a majority of the time. Anyways, Misato's out of the house a majority of the time. Now Asuka's run away, so all Shinji has is really himself. And he even states that in one of the first scenes he's in. He's walking on beach, he's like, I'm all alone now, Jesus. This sucks. I had friends. Now I'm literally all gone. Toji's gone, Kensuke's gone. Everybody in Shinji's life that mattered to him is gone, and lo and behold, comes Kaoru. And we'll definitely get into that scene when it actually comes up and dive into that a little bit more. Because boy, do I love Kaoru. Now, what really throws Misato out of the loop, what throws Misato really into her investigative mode is the fact that Seele discovers Asuka and brings her to the hospital. And all this seems to fit together in a puzzle. There's a fifth child, Kaoru, and everything just seems to be fitting together too well for her comfort. Which is an interesting note, considering the fact that this is fitting so well that she's actually like, this isn't, none of our plans ever fucking work, so why is this one working? And therefore, her not being used to that, and thank God she's not used to that she actually starts investigating what the shit's going on. More specifically, her and Hyuga. Now, I gotta say, I like the progression with Hyuga here, because we've known, and it's been established in previous episodes, that Hyuga has had a tiny little crush on Misato throughout the entire thing. And it's nice to see it actually brought up here. In fact, there's a line later on in this episode where Kaoru was going down in there, and Hyuga goes, well, it's fine if I'm dying as long as I'm right here with you. And Misato goes, oh, thank you. I like this progression that goes on here, because Kaji's dead, right? And Hyuga knows that Kaji's dead, and he knows how close those two were. He's very careful bringing up the subject of Kaji, and he's very conservative with how he approaches Misato. In fact, he never really does approach her. He just sometimes states why that he really does like her, and I like to see that Misato actually acknowledges that finally. While in the previous episode where this kind of happens, she just brushes Hyuga off after she says it's unpredictable, kind of like you, Misato. And she just brushes him off. She doesn't even, I don't even think she really heard him. And she's just staring at this disturbing Evangelion. And here, she actually acknowledges the fact that Hyuga likes her. She knows that Hyuga does like her. Will she ever have those feelings for him? Probably not. And I think that's definitely a point that Hideki Anno had with this kind of relationship going on here. But I really like the fact that she's actually kind of opened up to Hyuga. Again, just another reason why Misato's my favorite character. And just how awesome she is, just in general. I just love that little bit here. This episode is so full of all these little tiny nitpicks. I've seen this episode more than any of the other episodes combined. I have seen this episode... Literally, I have analyzed this episode like frame for frame, or watched it frame by frame. I am that obsessed with this episode, and it's so full of these tiny little hints of stuff. It's so full of this stuff that foreshadows EOE. It's just wonderful. It's beautiful. Another thing I like about this episode is that, unlike a lot of previous episodes where there's something before that previous episode and they kind of drop it, or they bring it up a little bit later, here everything's right at the forefront. Everything that's brought up in previous episodes that have left us with a question is like answered here. or at least for the last 4 episodes, and like Ritsuko's been arrested and Gendo goes to see her, and she's like, the cat died and shit like that. Shinji is kind of frightened with himself, the fact that he's discovered that Rei Ayanami is really a clone of his mother, and therefore that explains why he had that feeling towards her, why he was like, you remind me of what a mom does. Now that's explained because of that, and Shinji's reflecting on it, so I like that. So I was talking about Kaji and actually going through with her investigation of Nerve. That's brought up. Shinji's increasing loneliness is definitely brought up here. I mean, that's the huge crux of this episode. Oh my god. There's just so much shit that goes on in this episode. It's intense. That's the only word I can really describe it as intense. Now, let's talk about that interrogation scene between Gendo. It's very brief, but Gendo and Ritsuko. It's very brief, but it's deep. The lights turn on, Gendo's there. Okay, we know that shit's gonna hit the fan. And you think that there's gonna be a lot of yelling, but there isn't. Ritsuko never acknowledges that he's really there. She never turns and faces him. She's always just slumped over in her chair, looking down at the ground, which is the complete opposite of how we saw her in front of Seele. In front of Seele, when she was butt naked, nonetheless, she had her head held high and everything like that. She was very spiteful. She was very upbeat. She was very much so spiting Seele, saying there's nothing you can do that'll make me feel terrible. But when she discovers that Gendo was the one that did this to her in all reality, she fucking falls apart. I mean, I've already talked about that in episode 23, but I'll bring that back up here in a little bit. And of course, because she falls apart, she kills Rei, yada yada yada, and everything just fucking explodes. So when we see her here with her head hung low, the total opposite of what she was in the previous episode here. The first thing, Gendo doesn't even speak, and she says, the cat died. I guess cats do die as well. She's just kind of reflecting on her own self-image. She's reflecting on herself, what she's done. She knows that she's a terrible person, but she knows she's fallen in the same trap as her mother, which is what disturbs her even more, and what disturbs me the most. But Gendo completely ignores that. Gendo, despite having a formal relationship with her, having feelings for Ritsuko, just goes, why the hell did you kill Rei? Of course, he doesn't just say that, but he's like, why did you do it? And Ritsuko's like, I didn't kill Yui. She says that. She's like, I didn't kill Yui, I killed Rei. And in reality, I think she actually did the right thing by killing them, because that is so absolutely immoral, that what Gendo was doing, and beyond disturbing, that it's like words can't describe how I feel about how disturbing that is and how immoral I feel that is. Anyways, and Ritsuko's like, no, I did that. I killed Rei because I lost to her. Just like my mother, I lost to her with you. Now, Ritsuko, as Gendo is interrogating her, Ritsuko is like, I feel nothing for you anymore. Or I feel nothing from you. She still loves Gendo. She does. She legitimately loves Gendo. And she's hurt with the fact that he's chosen Rei over her, just like her mom. Again, that circle thing that I talked about. Oh, look at that. That's right up here again, too. And Gendo goes, why? And she's like, because I feel nothing when you make love to me anymore. Meaning that they've had an ongoing relationship, and that means that it kept going. And he's like, you've done nothing but... Ritsuko's like, you've done nothing but use me, Gendo. You've used me for my body, and that's it. You've used me for my brain. That's it. You never loved me. You were never capable of loving anybody else other than Yui, which is true. In fact, the reason why Gendo is setting everything up, we discover in EOE, is because that's it. He's doing everything for Yui and himself. He is the ultimate form of selfishness in this show, considering how selfish everyone else is. He is the ultimate form of selfishness. Which again is why he's a totally awesome villain. And he says this line that becomes very, becomes very important during a certain scene in End of Evangelion. I'll bring it up more then, but he says, you disappointed me, or I am very disappointed with you. It depends on how it's subtitled. And then he disappears. He leaves, leaving Ritsuko all alone. Now, you disappointed me is a line that I'm going to talk about a lot in End of Evangelion, because of a certain scene, and if you've watched End of Evangelion, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. When Shinji first meets Kaoru at the beginning of this episode, I love the lighting, because it literally makes this place look like fucking hell. Before, when Tokyo 3 looked like a haven and everything like that, it was very beautifully drawn, it was very vibrant in color. Here it's nothing but like a red and orange palette, and everything is just a mixture of black, red, orange, and yellow. Those are the colors. Those are the 4 colors that popped up. And the way how he's speaking, he's like, I am all alone. And I've already talked about this previously, but he's like, I'm all alone, and what the fuck am I going to do? I'm all alone. This is hell. He's basically saying to himself that this is hell. And it's drawn that way, too. This looks... well, it looks phenomenal. But he's looking around and he's like, this looks like hell. This is hell. This has become Shinji's hell. Not piloting the Eva. Not you know, saving the world. It's the fact that Shinji is trapped here. It's the fact that Shinji is literally all alone. That loneliness that, again, has become such a theme in Evangelion is his hell. It's not pain, it's none of that shit, it's the emotional trauma. It's that feeling of being alone that is what causes Shinji to make the actions that he does. And it's one reason why, oh my god, look, Kaoru. And another thing, too, that's different from all of the other fucking characters here, like Toji beat him up, and the only reason why Kensuke talked to him was because Toji beat him up. Asuka just made fun of Shinji, and Rei was just fucking neutral throughout the entire show. Kaoru's very warm to Shinji. Which is very important, because there's only one other character in the entire show that was like that to Shinji. And that was Kaji. And how does Shinji act with Kaoru? Oh yeah. He acts like how he acted with Kaji. Oh my god, I see dots connecting here, and so this is why I think Shinji actually is gay. Because he's so much more comfortable with men than he is with women. And he's been with women his entire life, too, which is a very Freudian thing, by the way. Sigmund Freud believed that the more time you spend with women, the more likely you were to be gay, which is totally wrong, but Freudians believe that, and Hideki Anno is Freudian, and it makes sense. I'm sorry, I know that a lot of people can be debated, and it can be debated. It legitimately can be debated. I don't believe Shinji is gay in the Rebuild movies, but I believe he is in the show. And to me, it was just all these dots were connecting up. The Freudian thing, the Shinji wearing women's clothing, him only feeling comfortable around men. All that shit that's going on is this. It has led up to this episode, and it has led me to the conclusion that I think Shinji is gay. And there's a lot of stuff in this episode to say that it is, because of how open Shinji is to Kaoru, and how open and curious Kaoru is to Shinji. Now, I love how Shinji's introduced to Kaoru. Shinji is screaming how he's alone, and first off, I want to say that the use of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, more specifically, I believe the fourth movement of the Ninth Symphony, Ode to Joy, is one of the most beautiful choices for this episode in terms of its music, and here's why. What is the first thing that Shinji hears from Kaoru? It's not him saying hello, it's Ode to Joy. It's that music. Now, what is Ode to Joy? Ode to Joy, the whole thing, and I'll get into this later when the battle between Shinji and Kaoru happens. But Shinji hears that, and Beethoven, Ode to Joy is about love, it's about life, it's about the celebration of life, it's about rebirth. It's about happiness, it's about joy. And that's the first thing Shinji hears from Kaoru. And of course he's attracted to this, it's a very beautiful song, in fact he even listens to it on his tape player. He's not listening to that normal tape or that normal song that plays throughout the rest of the series. You notice that it's like the same song. It's always that same kind of poppy sounding song throughout the rest of the series. Here it's something new. He's put in a new tape. Now there's a couple things that hint that there's something wrong with Kaoru, that something's off with Kaoru. One is the artistic choice of having both his eyes red and his hair white, making him an albino. Oh yeah, Rei has the same issue. In fact, they actually raise that up. And the other thing is, he never calls us humans. He never calls Shinji human. He never calls anyone a human. He calls them Lilin. Okay, not quite sure what that means yet, but I'll talk about that later. Anyways, he's like singing. You see, he's such the total opposite of Shinji in many ways. Well, Shinji's very cold, very reserved, very intrusive, or very intrinsic towards himself. Karu's very extrinsic. He's very much, he shows his emotions all the time. He's actually, let's see, he spreads his emotion. He's basically, in almost every way, shape, and form, the opposite of Shinji in this episode, which is, again, goes into that whole thing, opposites attract, that's been a theme of Evangelion pretty much since the beginning. Anyways, he goes, singing, it really enriches the soul, which that goes to his extrinsic thing, because you sing. Singing is a very outward thing. I sing all the time. I suck at it, but I sing all the time. Just ask the SOS people. Sometimes they want to gouge their ears out, but I sing. And it's a very outward thing, and he asks Shinji, do you ever sing? Do you ever sing? And Shinji goes, no, I never do. He's like, huh, that's weird. It enriches the soul. You should try it sometime. I love that. I love that. You should try it sometime. I love that. Absolutely beautiful. And of course, he knows who Shinji is right off, and Shinji's like, who are you? Oh yeah, what conversation started off like that too? Oh yeah, the one with Kaji. First time Shinji meets Kaji, he goes, oh hello Shinji Ikari, it's good to meet you. He's like, you know my name, you're a legend. You pilot the Evangelion, you're a legend. Karu says almost the same exact thing. She's like, you know my name? He's like, everyone knows your name, you're a legend. Beautiful, beautiful parallel lines there, which is another theme in Evangelion that's brought up here. Oh my god, I love this episode. Now, another thing that I really like, and again, this has to do with the animation of this episode, which there actually really isn't, when you look at it, much animation at all in this episode. However, because they had zero money. But I've already talked about that a million times. Now Karu looks over and he's like, my name's Karu. First off, he doesn't introduce himself. Shinji's the one, what's your name? He's actually initiated. Shinji's the one that kind of initiates this. Shinji goes, oh, what's your name? He's never done that with anyone before, not even Kaji. It's like, what's your name? And he goes, I'm the fifth child, my name is Karu Nagisa. And Karu then smiles, and Shinji blushes. And Shinji's like, oh, hi, Nagisa. And Karu goes, you just call me Karu, just call me by my first name. And then Shinji blushes even more and gives a small, uneasy smile, but you can see that he's happy. And he's like, oh, and just call me Shinji. And that makes Karu smile even more. Now, there is, without a shadow of a doubt, and this has been confirmed both by Hideaki Anno and the writers of and other writers and the director of even this episode, that Karu is, in fact, a homosexual. Or presented that way. Karu is gay. I mean, in the manga, as much as I don't like Karu in the manga, though I love everyone else in the manga, but though I don't like Karu in the manga, that is where it is confirmed. That is where they bring it out. Even in the rebuilds, he is. And so, without a shadow of a doubt, 100% confirmed, that's what Karu is. Karu is, right from the get-go, very attracted to Shinji. More attracted to him than anyone else. He's very curious of who Shinji is, and believe it or not, he has the same feelings for Shinji, and this is going to sound weird, but he has the same feelings for Shinji that I do. And that was, he really sees Shinji as this poor soul who he just wants to hug him and tell him it's going to be alright, even though it's probably not. Now, I said that in a previous episode, and I didn't notice it until this viewing, but that's exactly how Karu is. Karu was like, everything's going to be fine, Shinji, even though it's really not. He's there to, protect. He wants to protect Shinji, even though he feels like his destiny won't allow him to do that. Which makes that decision at the ending make all the more sense. But we'll get into that a little later. And at the same time, how curious he is with Shinji makes him fall in love. And that's what Karu is. Again, Karu is almost the complete and total opposite of Shinji in that matter. While Karu while Shinji is very reserved to say he likes anybody, even as a friend. I mean, look how long it took him to finally admit that Toji, Kensuke, and Rei, and Misato were friends. Well, he's like, hey, I already know I'm going to be friends with you. Hey, let's be friends. He's the one who's very much out there. He's got a smile on his face, wants to talk to you, wants to shake your hand. He's that kind of a person. Or thing, when we find out later that he's an angel. And I'm rambling. I love this episode. Now, I need to also make this note, is when we see that Kaoru is in Ava Unit 02, and he's syncing extremely well with Ava Unit 02, which should be impossible, and all the characters make note of that. But I'm not here to talk about that, because that's kind of obvious that we already know something's off about Kaoru, but not necessarily in a bad way. Now, everyone's saying, oh, that's fucking impossible, he can't do that, there's something really odd, and everyone's all confirming basically what the audience themselves is thinking, that something's not right with this kid. Now, we see Rei in her Ava Unit 0, and she's very straight-faced, and usually Shinji is very straight-faced. However, he's got the same exact smile on his face as Kaoru, and we actually see that his sync ratio has actually increased from the previous episode. Now, they don't say that, but if you're a freak like me and actually look at the sync ratios whenever they hook up, you will notice that it is higher here than it has ever been before. And my god, does Shinji look like he's at peace. Oh my god, when was the last time that happened? Holy shit, that was episode 4 with him and Kensuke. See, I told you I'd bring that up later. I told you and I wasn't lying. And here's where it comes. He actually legitimately looks both happy and at peace with himself. He's looked happy before with Kaji. He's looked at peace himself with Kensuke, and here he looks both. And Kaoru looks the same way, but of course that's who Kaoru is. Now, what's interesting is that when Rei meets Kaoru really for the first time, she hates him. She knows that there's something wrong. She really hates him, and Rei's an emotional wreck, is an emotionless sack of a woman. Again, and of course, because she died in the last episode, and now this is a different one, and she goes back to that neutral, neither positive nor negative, and here she's specifically negative to Kaoru. She knows who he is, and she goes, "Who are you?" She looks very angry at him, and well, Kaoru was just looking her out. It was like, I wanted to meet you. Kaoru, in fact, that's why Kaoru was there. He's like, I wanted to meet you. You must be the first time I'm Kaoru. And she's like, who are you? And she's pissed. She's angry. She's like, I don't know who you are, but I don't like you. And that's not Rei at all. Rei doesn't do that. Rei's not supposed to do this. Why is she doing this to Kaoru? Because Shinji feels alone, he hasn't been coming home. Now that Misato's home, she's looking for Shinji, and you see, this is what drives me up the... It doesn't drive me up the wall, but it just drives me insane about the show. It's like a never-ending cycle. It's a catch-22. Because Shinji feels alone, and because he's grown, he's actually looking for Kaoru. Which is a nice little note. He was actually looking for Kaoru to get done with his sync test, to get done with his physical and shit like that. He was looking for him, and he's waiting at Nerve. However, Misato goes home and sees that he's not there, and now she feels lonely because of that. So it's a catch-22. No matter what, they're going to feel lonely, and life just fucking sucks for both Misato and Shinji. However, Shinji feels like he has purpose now. Shinji wants to be with Kaoru. Shinji's like, oh my god, I feel good with him. I feel happy with Kaoru. I feel joyous with Kaoru, and that's important, because when Kaoru comes out, Kaoru goes, were you waiting here for me? And Shinji blushes and goes, no, okay, maybe, and he tells the truth. He breaks down and tells the truth. Usually he kind of backs his way out of it beforehand, even with Kaji, he backs his way out of it. He backs away. And here, he's like, he admits it. Kaoru just looks at Shinji and says, were you waiting for me? And while Shinji's going, no, he gives Shinji a look, a small little smile, and then Shinji blushes even more and gives a small smile back. He's like, yeah, I was. And he fully admits it. That wouldn't have happened to Shinji before, but it's happening here with Kaoru. Kaoru has had that positive effect on Shinji. Now, again, here's another parallel between how Shinji acts with Kaoru and how Shinji acts acted with Kaji. If you notice that with the conversations with Kaji, Shinji was very open. Shinji was very much so like, I can talk to you. I can speak to you. I can open up to you. And that's exactly what's happening here in this episode with Shinji and Kaoru. He literally admits why he doesn't want to go home. He even says that. He's like, lately I don't really want to go home because, well, quite frankly, I feel lonely. And he all but basically says, I wanted to be with you. And he says, I was going to take a shower and go home, but lately I don't feel like I want to go home. And Karu actually gets really close to him, kind of bends down, smiles, and goes, "A place to return home to, that sounds nice." And he's like, "It'd be nice if it wasn't so lonely." And Karu's like, "Oh, I think I understand that." Now you see, here's the thing that I also like about Karu, which I think makes him work so well. The unfortunate thing with Shinji is that Shinji knows how humans work too well for his own good. He knows that humans can hurt you just as much as they can love you. He knows that risk, which is why he's intrusive. Karu is very naive towards human nature, which explains, he foreshadows even more why he's an angel. And he's very naive towards how humans interact. That's why he asks all these questions. He asks, "Oh, a home to return to? That must be nice." Or he goes up to Shinji, is like, "Oh, I feel so bad for you, and you're earning my empathy," he says later, "and therefore I love you." Which is a little rushed. And, you know, wonderful bit of contrasting in terms of character, in terms of character there. Absolutely, in my opinion, this is the best it's ever been handled. Not in the manga, not in the rebuilds. This is where it is handled the best. It's in this episode. And let the awkwardness begin. I really don't want to talk about this because of how awkward it is, and I usually don't talk about this shit. However, Karu goes, "Oh, you don't want to go home?" "Well, I want to talk to you more." He admits to Shinji's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you more." And he's like, "You still going to take a shower?" And Shinji's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can I take a shower with you?" Okay. And Shinji at first is like, what? And he's like, "Oh, is that a no? I'm sorry." And Karu goes, "Oh, wait, is that a no? I'm sorry." And Shinji's like, No. He's actually happy that he has someone to go with, I think. And the fact that he was waiting for Karu in the first place just makes it kind of a bit more adorable, but yet awkward, because they're both 14 years old, and you don't want to like this because they're 14 years old, and because they're 14 years old, that's beyond the youngest limit here in the United States, which makes it almost perverty-like, which, I mean, oh my god, I don't want to get into it. And so they take a shower together. And more, cuteness ensues. So Karu basically explains to Shinji what so many people have been trying to say to Shinji for so long, and he's never gotten it, and now he finally does. Karu explains the hedgehog's dilemma to Shinji and just basically slaps him in the face with it. He's like, "Oh, well, he says, you go so long to avoid first contact. First off, oh my god, I'm not even halfway through this episode, and this video's almost like a half hour. This is fucking ridiculous." But I knew this episode was going to be long because I have a shit ton to talk about in this episode. Anyways, Karu goes, "You go to such great lengths, Shinji, to avoid other people. That way you don't have to worry about getting hurt. However, if you keep doing that, you will always be lonely no matter what you do. You will always be unhappy." And you see that again goes into the opposite. Why Karu is the opposite. Karu is very open towards people. He's very much like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" He talks to people. And all this sort of shit. He seeks people out to talk to. Well, Shinji would much rather be alone most of the time. Which again is interesting, why the fact that he finally got used to not being alone, suddenly he feels alone again, like, shit, I need to find contact. Oh, look, Karu, thank god I can hang out with you, right? And he falls in love with him. And then, yeah, and Karu goes, "You will never be able to banish," quote, "humans can never banish their loneliness for good." And because Karu knows this, that's why Karu is getting extremely close to Shinji. He likes Shinji. He's been fascinated by Shinji. And because he's been fascinated, he's turned that fascination into what he feels like to be love. And he says that in this scene. And then comes my favorite line in this episode, believe it or not. And that is when Karu goes, "And believe it or not, what makes people, no matter what, you will always feel some form of loneliness," which is a very Freudian thing, and at the same time, that's one of the few things in Freudianism that I believe in, and that is humans will always feel alone no matter what. And that's because we will never 100% be able to understand everything about everybody. And so we'll always feel alone, but every once in a while we can forget it. Every once in a while we can forget it. That's my favorite line. That is my favorite fucking line in this show. Every once in a while we forget it, and he puts his hand over Shinji's and squeezes ever so slightly. Now at first Shinji's like, "Oh shit!" He wasn't expecting that, but then he blushes and he lets it happen. He just stays there. He doesn't pull back. He doesn't freak out like he did with Misato. When Misato reached to grab his hand, he says, "Don't touch me," and he rolls over and hides. He did that with Asuka. at the same way. He also kind of did that with Rei. But yet, when Kaoru did it, he stays there and lets him hold his hand. In fact, he actually gives a quick little smile before the camera... when he looks away. He looks down at Kaoru, blushes because of it, and then he looks away quickly, and actually gives, for a brief bit of animation, a little smile. And then it cuts away, and all the power goes off, and he's like, well, it's time to go to bed, I guess. And Kaoru's happy that Shinji's let him do this. That Shinji has let him hold his hand. And Kaoru goes, it's that time already. Because he's just happy being there with Shinji. And Shinji's happy being there with Kaoru. You can't deny that that's adorable. That is fucking adorable. And Shinji's like, no, we gotta go to bed. And Kaoru goes, together? And, of course, it was a joke. And in the Japanese version, it's kind of performed as a joke. He goes, together? And Shinji goes, no, that's not what I meant. And, which is also funny, because before, when Kaji brought something up like that in the first episode he's in, when he goes, oh, tell me, is Masato wild and bad like she always used to be? And everyone freaks out. Shinji doesn't freak out, but here, when Kaoru asks her, he does. He freaks out. Asks him, he freaks out. Again, just kind of one of those full circle kind of things that are going on here. Just another bit of evidence to make me think that Shinji's gay. And he says, you can join me if you want. You can. There's plenty of room in my room for you to sleep if you don't want to go home. Which is beautiful. The fact that Kaoru cares about Shinji enough to say, you know what, if you don't want to go home, you can just stay with me. You can. And Shinji does. Kaoru says, you're so delicate like glass, especially your heart. And then he looks down at Shinji, meaning that was aimed towards Shinji. And Shinji blushes deeply. And keeps looking up at him, at Kaoru, who has stood up and is butt naked right in front of him, and he's admiring the view, which I'm not, but he's admiring the view. And Kaoru says, and he goes, you have my regard for your heart. And Shinji blushes even deeper and goes, me? And Kaoru says, it means I love you. So Seele forms this thing, and they're like, this is it, we're done, fuck you Gendo, we're fucking done, you've betrayed us for the last time, you're done. And they say, this is the end of Seele, and it's all Gendo's fault. More foreshadow end of Evangelion, everyone. And then it cuts immediately to Gendo in front of Eva Unit 01. Eva Unit 01. Which, of course, we all know is Yui, and he's speaking to Yui. And Gendo goes, the time that's been given to us is running short. Forgive me for all that I've done and all this shit. And he says, it finally becomes clear why he got rid of the Lance Longinus, and that's because it stood in the way with doing whatever he wants to do with Yui. And he says, please Yui, just have a little bit of patience. However, it cuts quickly to his hand, which has that fucking Adam baby fetus in it. Oh shit, I was right, look at that. Even my first viewing I caught onto it. And I jumped up and down for joy, knowing that what Kaji called Adam wasn't really Adam, and we find out here that that's not Adam. Though given at this time we don't know what that is, but seeing that little tiny baby fetus in the palm of Gendo's hand, it confirms that it's not Adam. Confirms that, oh shit, that was another lie. Which Masato kind of hinted at, but we still didn't quite understand what was going on. Now it makes sense why Third Impact wouldn't happen if Rei went down there and grabbed the Lance of Longinus. Whatever that thing was, it was impeding his plans to connecting with Yui, and whatever that's going to be. That also explains why, when you look at what the rest of the episodes from the point when he gets Adam, Gendo is never seen without his gloves on. Well, now it makes sense why he always had his gloves on, because, well, if you have that monstrosity thing on you, the palm of your hand, yeah, you might want to keep that covered up, because that's kind of that's kind of fucked. That's really disturbing, actually. And then we get the next scene, which is more Shinji Kaoru. Now we go back to Misato in the apartment where Shinji and Asuka are supposed to be, and she's holding Pen, right? And this is really sad. And she's like, I was glad we were in the outskirts of the city. Thank God we were here, because if we weren't, you would have been killed in that blast. And Pen's like, meh, meh, being all adorable, like Pen is. And Misato goes, because of that, I'm giving you away. You need to be somewhere safer than here, Pen. I can't take care of you anymore. And before that, in episode 23, we really understand that Pen is the only thing keeping Misato kind of grounded in terms of her loneliness. Because, well, Pen's that pet. Pets do that. Pets tend to fill that void. There's a great line in Marley and Me where he says, what makes Marley so great is that no matter what I say, he won't judge me. And that's what pets are. Pets are like that. And she gives Pen away and says, this is the last time I'll ever see you, Pen. And she starts crying because of that. She's like, you're the last thing I ever have, and now I don't even have you. Shinji's gone away. Asuka's basically dead. Kaji's dead. Now I won't be able to have you, but I'm doing this for your own good. Again, a very selfless thing that makes me think again why she's the hero of this fucking show. Now I love the scene with Shinji and Kaoru sleeping next to each other. Shinji's on the floor. And Kaoru's on the bed, and the first thing Kaoru says is like, oh, you know, it really should be you on the floor and not me since you're my guest. A very human kind of statement, and Shinji's very humble. It's like, no, quite frankly, I'm actually kind of used to sleeping on the floor. Very Japanese of both of them, really. And Shinji looks over at Kaoru. First off, here's what's actually another parallel between Shinji and Kaoru and Shinji and Kaji. During the scene where they're sleeping next to each other, in episode 18, I think, Shinji and Kaji are sleeping next to each other, and they never look at each other. They're always looking away. Their butts are towards each other, basically. They're facing away from each other. Here, Shinji never stops looking at Kaoru. He's like, oh, hey, beautiful. While he's saying, you're the one who's doing me a favor by letting me stay over. And Kaoru's smiling that entire time, looking up at this black light thing. And the stance behind his back, very relaxed. Well, Shinji has his stuff all over him. He's kind of interesting animated though. While Kaoru's very relaxed with his hands behind his head, you see Shinji kind of holding himself. He's kind of embracing himself. Again, just to kind of go on how they're the opposite kind of thing. But anyways, Shinji is always looking at Kaoru, and here's the difference between those two conversations. They look at each other. That's key. Kaoru looks at Shinji, and Shinji looks at Kaoru, and they lock eyes. And it's a beautiful moment. Because it's never happened with anybody with Shinji before. That's never fucking happened. And here it is. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's a happy moment, to quote Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. And for the first time ever, Shinji's actually asked a question, what do you want to talk about? No one is imposing a conversation on Shinji. Kaoru's like, what do you want to talk about? I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Whatever it is, I don't care. I want to talk to you. Well, that's new. And Shinji's even like that. He's like, well, that's new. And he looks up at the ceiling like Kaoru. And that's apparently sometime over the line when he says something, Kaoru looks over at Shinji when Shinji doesn't realize that Kaoru's looking at him. So he's looking up. Shinji goes, well, and he starts opening up to Shinji. He starts opening up to Kaoru even more. He willingly talks to Kaoru about his dad, about his past, about his mother. The only other time that that's happened, really, and not even quite to this extent, look at me shaking, I'm that excited, not even quite to that extent, is when Shinji's with Kaji. Oh my god. Shinji's gay. It's so sweet. It is a beautiful moment, character-wise, for Shinji. Shinji actually feels happy. He's like, Oh my god. And he even says that to himself after he's done saying, however, I really hated my father. I don't hate people, I'm just scared of them. And he goes, however, and he's like, and he goes, however, I really do hate my father. He goes silent for a second. And then he goes, why am I telling all this to Kaoru? And you hear something shift in the bed, and he looks over, blushes, and sees that Kaoru's looking down at him, and Kaoru's got this nice, cute little smile on his face. And he goes, you know, sometimes I think I was born just to meet you. And then in the next scene, Kaoru's all alone out in the middle of the new lake where New Tokyo used to be, and he's like, humans can't build something from nothing, which I personally take offense to because, well, I made movies out of nothing. Not literally, but you know what I mean. And Kaoru goes, humans can't create anything without having something to hold on to. Which for him is Shinji, and for Shinji, it's Kaoru. And suddenly, Seele shows up. And I know people had the same reaction as me. That was when I was like, oh no. I was sitting there, I remember the first time I watched it, and Seele shows up. I was like, no, he's the final angel, no. And I was like, no, why? Why, Hideaki Anno, why you do this to me? And, it's painful. Now, Kaoru actually brings up a very philosophical point that, again, makes sense why Hideaki Anno would put this in here. He goes, men are trying to become, Seele goes, one of the Seele members goes, men are trying to become gods, Gendo. And he's like, that's what gives the humans hope. And then Kaoru smiles because Shinji doesn't want to do this, and he's like, hope, you're saying that this is what gives the Lilin the hope, is that they might become a god? And he smiles at this, and I think it's because of his interactions with Shinji. Shinji doesn't want to become a god. Shinji just wants to be his own person. He's like, fuck the world. Fuck it. I just want to be me. And I think that's why Kaoru's very disbelieving of that statement. He's like, the hope, you're saying this is what gives the Lilin hope? Love that. Oh, love. Nice bit of animation. Nice. Oh, beautifully written. Beautifully shot. So, we all but get told that Kaoru is an angel, which is heartbreaking. And basically, we discover that what the fuck that is. It confirms that whatever the fuck that is in Shigeto's hand is indeed Adam, which I already knew. And that because he has Adam's resurrected form within Gendo, it is up to Kaoru to commence what they considered the Instrumentality Project. When really, all Seele hopes to do is to make Kaoru go down to Central Dogma to try to make contact with, now we know as Lilith, and therefore making Gendo have to use his hand, which means use Eva Unit 01, which they say that the Evangelions are the things that's going to make this Human Instrumentality Project work, which we still have no fucking clue what that shit is. However, I just spit. And so they don't give a fuck about Kaoru. They pretend they give a fuck about Kaoru, but really they don't. And so Kaoru's nothing but a pawn. Fuck yeah, Masato. Fuck yeah. She goes to see, after getting information from Hyuga, she goes to see Ritsuko in that prison cell, and she's in this, and Ritsuko's in the same crumpled up over position that she always is, in the middle of that beautiful nerve symbol that I fucking love to fucking death. I mean, look at that, it's fucking beautiful. Anyways, and she's like, I have a question to ask you, and Ritsuko's like, you do realize that all conversations in here are recorded? And Masato says, I don't care. And she says, and the only reason why she's there is because she wants to know who the fuck this fifth child is, who Kaoru is. And that's because Kaoru was running the Evangelion Unit 002 on his own will. That's not supposed to happen with Evangelions. It's not. He says it's theoretically impossible. Of course, everything in the show is theoretically impossible, but whatever. So when the show says something's theoretically impossible, you know that it's really bad. And Ritsuko, all Ritsuko says is, he's most likely the final messenger, meaning he's the final angel. Cut immediately to Karu standing in front of Unit 02, and he goes, "It is time, Adam's Dark Shadow, servant of the Lilum," and he starts floating. And then the Ava Unit 02 wakes up, and we get shit hitting the fan for the next, like, 10 minutes, and oh my god, it's awesome. But so sad. Now, here's the thing that makes this work so well, and this is, to me, what makes an action scene work so good. There really isn't much action going on here in terms of animation. It's nothing but really the two Evangelions, Unit 01 and Unit 02, squaring off and trying to basically, they're at like this tug-of-war thing, like this opposite tug-of-war. Instead of pulling, they're pushing into each other who's going to win, and they're nothing but quivering. There's not much animation going on in this entire fight scene. However, what makes it work is that there's so much fucking weight to it, the fact that Ode to Joy is playing in the background, and you're so emotionally invested into what's going on, you feel like there's a lot more going on than what there is. Because I'll be honest, I was watching it at face value one time, seeing why, because I wanted to understand why people don't like this episode. I wanted to understand why people don't appreciate it for what it is. So I was watching it on face value, and this is what it came up with. This is what I came up with. And that is, this action scene really, in all essence, compared to all the other action scenes that happen, sucks. They're just standing there, fighting, and the major fight that happens off screen. However, what made it work for me was I was so emotionally connected with these characters that I didn't care. That emotional connection with those characters that I had was transparent, was going into this battle. And I was like, this is what makes that work. Now, let me bring up another example. Sure, these fight scenes are awesome anyways, but let me bring this up. Let me compare the end duel between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, Anakin Sky Douchebag, with the end fight scene on Return of the Jedi between Darth Vader and Luke. Return of the Jedi. Revenge of the Sith. We have them flying all around all over the place, and it does look rather badass. They're flying all over the place, they're like explosions, it's badass. And then we have Return of the Jedi, which is very slow, long takes, they're very calculated moves. Which one do people predominantly like? Oh yeah, the one with the long takes and less moves. The more calculated moves. Now, why is that? That's because we were more emotionally connected with the characters. You can make, it's kind of like, let's another example. The Transformer fights on Transformers movies. We're not emotionally connected to any of them. Though there's tons of explosions, we don't remember it 2 days later. The battles on Pacific Rim, we remember because we're emotionally connected to the characters. Now, you can argue that that's a less example, but me being a kaiju fan, I drew that one. But anyways, back to Star Wars. We have... I'm really excited. We have Shinji going over here, doing this shit. I only have 20 minutes left on this thing. We have Luke and Vader squaring it off, and we're so invested in these characters, we make it feel like there's more going on than what there really is. We remember that fight more than we remember the fight from Revenge of the Sith. That is undebatable. We do. And it's because of that emotional connection. This is another great example of that. There really isn't that much of a fight going on here. They're just squaring off against each other. But that emotional connection with the characters make us think that there's more going on than what there really is. Which I think is absolutely genius, and that just brings up that perfect quote by Nicholas Meyer that art relies on restriction and makes it work. It is fucking beautiful. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is overall not Shinji and Karu, not the awesome characters, not what happens in this episode, not the reveals in this episode. It is that technical aspect that makes me love it. The fact that Hideaki Anno was able to make something out of almost nothing. That is a sign of a good writer and filmmaker. Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk about this scene, the action scene, and that I already haven't really touched upon. I've talked about the big thing with this episode already. I need to scooch over just a tad bit more. And That, of course, is the whole emotion things. And here what I want to talk about is what we discover in the battle itself. One, I want to talk about Shinji. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk about this. I'm finally talking about this after so long, and bottling up, and I'm finally letting it out and bitching in front of a camera, and you guys are watching it, and I fucking love it. I love this job. Anyways, Shinji refuses to believe that Kaoru is doing this. He's like, it's a fucking lie. It's a lie. You're lying. And Misato's the one that goes over and says, it's a fact, Shinji. You have to accept it. Do your job. And Shinji looks at the camera, and he's pissed. And he goes, zooming down, and Kaoru looks up. He's like, Shinji, you're late. And he's like, you betrayed me, Kaoru. You betrayed my feelings. You betrayed my love. You betrayed me just like my father did. Love that line. And it cuts immediately to Gendo sitting there like this. And, oh, that line is so beautiful. You betrayed me just like my father did. Now, if you notice, Kaoru was actually rather happy throughout the entire thing, where he never is really seen without a slight smile on his face. Here's the only time that that happens. He's very sad that he has to do it because he feels that it is his destiny to bring the end of the Lilith by getting in contact with Lilith, which is really what that thing is, that's crucified against the wall thing. And so Kaoru's very sad, and he gets in a fight with Eva Unit 02, and he goes, Eva Unit 02's soul has receded into itself, and because it has receded into itself, because of Asuka, it has no will, and because it has no will, I can take over it. Therefore, Unit 02 is mine. And it starts attacking Shinji. Shinji gets hurt, which hurts Kaoru, but in a different way. And he tries to stab it. Shinji tries to stab the Eva Unit 02, but it pushes it away. It's about to kill Kaoru, but then you see an AT field show up. He's like, oh my god, you got an AT field, meaning confirming for Shinji that what we already knew, and that is Kaoru's an angel. He's like, yes, this is what you Lilin call an AT field. This is what you call an AT field. It's that thing binding your soul. It's that thing guarding your soul. It's that thing that binds all organic energy together. So glad we finally know what that mumbo-jumbo's all about, the AT field. And just to add some more intensity to this, they're like, let's blow up the base, just in case they reach that, because, quite frankly, if we blow up the base, and that means third impact won't happen quite as fast. And Hyuga's like, yep, but that means we'll die. And she's like, I know. And she's like, well, dying won't be so bad as long as I'm next to me. That's a little cute moment in this fucked up fucking... Okay, that's it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about Ode to Joy. I love Ode to Joy. That's probably the music that's going to be playing down at the bottom of this video. I love it that much. Okay, alright. Now again, I've already talked about how that song represents joy, happiness, rebirth. Life. Now a lot of people call it pretentious that Hideaki Anno decided to use this music, because it contrasts with everything that's going on. Now here's why I don't think it's pretentious at all. It's because of that opposite. It works so well because it's so opposite. Shinji feels like his life is coming to an end here. He has no choice but to kill Kaoru, or else everyone dies. Shinji was reborn to feel. Another theme with Ode to Joy. He was reborn to pilot the Eva. He was reborn to save humanity, and now the only way to do this is to kill the person that he has really fallen in love with. So when he destroys, well, he doesn't really destroy, but he knocks out Eva Unit 02, and we discover that Kaoru is in front of what he thinks is Adam, and he says, oh my god, no, it's Lilith. Oh, now everything explains they just want me to start third impact. He realizes what Seilei's doing, and he was set up, and he turns around and he's like, I'm not going to start third impact. He makes a decision there, Kaoru, and says, I'm not going to start third impact. Shinji, I want you to kill me. Because Shinji grabs him, first off, wonderful imagery, grabs Kaoru, floating Kaoru, in his hand, has him right in front of him, right? And one of my favorite images in this series, actually I think it is my favorite image other than the crosses to come from this series. Shinji's holding Kaoru in his hand and goes, "Why did you do this?" "It's because it was my destiny. I had no other choice, Shinji. I'm sorry. I really do love you, Shinji. You gave me meaning in my short existence. You showed me that there's more to the Lilim than what Seele let on or what I was taught to believe. And because I love you, and because this is the only way I can save you, and to keep you alive, and to give you the chance of happiness again, I need to die. Kill me, Shinji." Oh, shit. That was the biggest fucking theme with episode 17, I think it was, when he almost kills Toji. But here's the difference between that. Well, that was Gendo's fault for using the dummy plug. This is all Shinji. It explains why he has fallen apart in End of Evangelion. Why am I not talking about 25 and 26? That's because I fucking hate those episodes and I pretend that they don't really exist, but I have to for this fucking show. And so that's why I think, and I know a lot of people complain about that shot that lasts forever, that's just Eva Unit 01 holding Kaoru and just standing there while there's that beautiful music playing. I love it, because if you approached it like I did, and you're so emotionally connected here, you're thinking exactly what Shinji's thinking. You're like, no, you can't do that. You can't kill him, but you have to. And you get into this moral battle with yourself. Just again, the genius of Hideaki Anno. The genius of the animators, that they're able to do that. And again, the genius choice of that music. Shinji has no choice but to kill Kaoru and ultimately does it, and he crushes him. So the next scene we see Shinji, he's torn apart, he's curled up in a ball again. He's almost crying at the shore, and Masato walks up to him and he's like, "I wish I didn't kill him." And Masato goes, "You're wrong, he wished to die." When somebody wishes to die, because Ritsuko was like, she's seen Ritsuko do this. Ritsuko's nothing but a shell of a person now. She's almost a shell of a person, but she wished she died at one point. She knows what this feels like. She's like, no, when somebody wishes to die, I think this is a bit of Hideaki Anno talking. When someone wishes to die, they have nothing left to live for, they might as well just die. They're not human anymore. And then Shinji goes, I loved him, Masato. I killed him and I loved him. And Masato shakes her head up and down, understanding. Now, I listened to the dub to this episode, and the dub changes that line. In the dub, Shinji goes, I really liked him as a good friend. The Japanese version, they used a form of romantic love. Which is just more of a reason why I hate the English dub. The fact that they changed that. In fact, to prove it even more, I read the early drafts of this episode. And in the early drafts, there's even a kissing scene between the two. And it was nothing like the one between Asuka and Shinji. It was nothing like that. They're saying goodbye to each other, and Kaoru gives Shinji a quick kiss, and it describes Shinji closing his eyes and accepting it. That was in the early drafts of the script. I've read it. I read it, which is just more of a reason why I think he's gay. And then the episode ends. Holy fuck. I can't believe I actually talk about this episode. Next time on Evangelion, congratulations on Neon Genesis Evangelion Retrospective, we talk about episode 25 and 26.